A Great Siege, Nacho, Libre, and Mickey Mouse are all on this day. Welcome back to On This Day. Today's date is June 16th, 2025. It is the 167th day of the year. There are 198 days left in this year. It is the 24th Monday in the 25th week and the 89th day of spring. You got 4 days left this coming Friday. Summer's here. If today's your birthday, your birthstone is a pearl or a moonstone. I happen to see this picture of the largest pearl that was ever found. It looks like a giant piece of white chewing gum, but it's about the size of 4 loaves of bread stacked on top of each other, and it weighs around 61 pounds. This Filipino fisherman found it and just didn't think nothing of it, threw it under his bed, had it there for years. Then he gifted it to this Canadian family he had met, I guess. And it's worth $140 million. I don't know if he ever got any of that money, but yeah, it is known as the Giga Pearl. The next closest pearl weighs about 14 pounds. Today is International Day of Family Remittance Day. This aims to recognize the crucial socioeconomic contributions made by millions of migrant workers who send money home to their families. This day highlights the financial impact of these remittances, which provide essential support for migrants, relatives, and foster sustainable development in their home countries and encourage inclusiveness. I don't know why they gave sending money home to another country a day, but it's there. All right, let's see what else June 16th has given us. 1632, Thomas Purchas shows up early to the Maine party. Before Maine was known for its lobster rolls and Stephen King, it was just trees, rocky coastline, and a brave few souls trying not to freeze to death. Thomas Purchas, which is a great name, by the way, became the first European settler in what is now Brunswick, Maine, thanks to a land patent from the Plymouth Company. 1779, Spain joins the revolutionary fray. The Great Siege of Gibraltar begins. Just when Britain thought it had enough problems juggling angry colonists in America, Spain jumped in and said, hey, mind if we pile on? In 1779, Spain officially declared war on Britain and immediately got to work trying to pry Gibraltar out of British hands. Thus began the Great Siege of Gibraltar, a nearly 4-year tug-of-war over a rock that mostly serves as a windy lookout spot. Spoiler, Britain held on to it, but Spain's entry into the war was another domino in a growing everyone versus Britain lineup of the era. 1824, Britain realizes kicking dogs isn't cool. At the Old Slaughter's Coffee House in London, yes, that's the actual name, some forward-thinking folks got together to form what would become the Royal Society of the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals. That's right, in the midst of a society that thought leech therapy and chimney sweeps were fine, someone finally said, hey, maybe we should stop beating horses. It was one of the first organized efforts to protect animals, and it all started over a few cups of overboiled British coffee. 1858, Abraham Lincoln's House Divided speech shakes things up. In Springfield, Illinois, Honest Abe delivered his now famous House Divided speech. He basically told America, we can't keep acting like a dysfunctional couple fighting over slavery forever. The speech didn't win him the Senate race that year, but it did plant the seed for his presidential campaign. Lincoln had a knack for turning uncomfortable truths into memorable lines, and this was one of his greatest hits. 1940, Lithuania gets a new government. In 1940, Lithuania woke up and found itself under new management, Soviet style. A communist government was installed, which is a polite way of saying the Soviets walked in and said, nice country, we'll take it. What followed was decades of occupation, repression, and the kind of bureaucratic grayness that makes the DMV line look like fun. Lithuania eventually broke free in the 1990s, but 1940 marked the beginning of a very long, very dark chapter in the country's history. 1972, Churchill Falls Hydroelectric Station goes online. Up in Labrador, Canada, engineers finished plugging the Churchill Falls Generating Station, the biggest single-site hydroelectric power in the country. It was a massive feat of engineering and a giant flex to the world on renewable energy. The thing still powers entire chunks of eastern Canada. It also sparked decades of controversy over revenue sharing, especially with Indigenous groups that weren't too thrilled with all the flooded land. Big energy comes with big baggage. Always has, always will. I do know that they're building all these solar farms out in the desert of California, and not many people are complaining. They're more like, oh, finally, we found some use for the Mars landscape that we have here in eastern California. 1981, Ken Taylor and the Argo situation. In 1981, during the Iran hostage crisis, most Americans were glued to their TV, watching what looked like the world's longest, least fun standoff. 52 Americans were being held hostage inside the U.S. Embassy in Tehran after Iranian revolutionaries stormed the compound. It was all riots, blindfolds, and escalating international tensions. But while the headlines screamed crisis, something remarkable and much quieter was happening behind the scenes. Enter Ken Taylor, the Canadian ambassador to Iran, and possibly the coolest diplomat to ever wear a tie. When 6 Americans managed to slip out during the chaos of the embassy takeover, they were left in a terrifying limbo, stuck in a hostile territory with no safe way out. That's when Taylor came in. Rather than send a sternly worded memo or just monitor the situation, he and his embassy staff risked their own lives by hiding the Americans in their own homes. And we're not talking just a few hours of couch surfing. They sheltered these fugitives for months. Then came the real plot twist. Taylor coordinated with the CIA to get the 6 Americans out of Iran using fake Canadian passports and a cover story so wild it sounded like a rejected episode of Mission Impossible. The plan? Pretend the Americans were part of a Canadian film crew scouting locations for a fake sci-fi movie called Argo. Spoiler alert, it worked. They made it out of Tehran, walked into history, and eventually into theaters. When the story was dramatized in the Oscar-winning film Argo, where Ben Affleck conveniently gave himself a lot more screen time than Ken Taylor. Back home, Taylor didn't just receive a polite thank you card. In 1981, freshly inaugurated President Ronald Reagan awarded him the Congressional Gold Medal, one of the highest civilian honors the U.S. can bestow. Keep in mind, Taylor isn't even an American. He also got a standing ovation from Congress. This was one of the few operations during the Cold War that the CIA was involved with that we actually know about. So next time someone says international relations are all handshake and hors d'oeuvres, remind them of Ken Taylor, the guy who ran an underground escape operation in the middle of a revolution and got a standing ovation from America for it. 2016, Mickey Mouse moves to Shanghai. China finally got its own dose of Mickey ears and overpriced churros when Shanghai Disneyland opened to the public in 2016. It was Disney's first park in mainland China, and it wasn't just a copy-paste of the American version. Nope, this one had local flair, bigger castle vibes, and a ton of rides tailored to the culture and tastes. Of course, it also came along with lines, massive crowds, and the kind of commercialized magic only a multi-billion-dollar corporation can deliver. Movies released on June 16, 2006, Nacho Libre. A monk follows his dream and becomes a luchador. The film is loosely based off the story of Fray Tormenta, I think that's how you pronounce the name, who worked as a masked luchador in Mexico. Jack Black produced and starred in this film. It grossed about $99 million worldwide. It's actually a really funny, entertaining movie. I've watched it several times. It's just one of those nice comfort movies you watch. Of course, my son wanted to see it in the theaters, and we never made it to it in the theaters. Tried to get him to watch it on DVD when it came out, but he's like all bitter about it. Everyone together, just type in the comment section, Thor, go see Nacho Libre. Died on this day, 2014, Tony Gwynn, American baseball player and coach. He was only 54 when he passed away. He was like Mr. Reliable. He was always good for a single. Wasn't really big in the, home run department, but that man always got on base. He was like Mr. Reliable. And they also called him Mr. Padre because he played with the Padres forever. Tony Gwynn was a big chewing tobacco guy, and smokeless tobacco was big in Major League Baseball. Eventually they banned the use during games, and he got cancer from it. He was going through treatment, and something happened where he lost oxygen during a treatment. That was in April of 2014. They sent him to a rehab place, and he eventually died of complications from his cancer treatment. Never met him, but I always heard he was just a decent guy. All right, that's today's video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you got some information out of it. Now go out, have a great day, be nice to each other.